Do I have a motion to accept the agenda?
Move approved.
Second.
Seconded by Ralph. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay. Approval of the previous meeting minutes from September 12th. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at the minutes?
Yes.
Does anybody have any comments on the minutes? Miracle of miracles? Wow. Can I get a motion, please?
Peter's not here.
That's true. No, Ralph, don't do it. Don't even think about it. Okay, can I get a motion, please?
Move to approve as written.
Second by Ralph, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay, old business, update on review of public records draft comprehensive agreement on the P3. Before we start, I just wanna ask the question of the, perhaps Omar? This is the comprehensive agreement that we all got about 2 weeks ago, which some of us have commented and others will comment on today. Is this still the draft or have there been major changes?
There have been more changes, and that was yesterday, right?
We received.
We received it yesterday. We had a few, changes, they redacted them, they sent it back to us yesterday.
They redacted them, they didn't accept your changes?
No, I mean, they commented in some of them they agreed on, some of them they have questions, we're still in that process.
So your comments were your comments largely technical issues, or?
Both. We had comments on, the legal team had comments, technical team had comments, labor, whoever was doing the labor agreement, they all had comments.
And who is it that is formulating, who's taking the comments and deciding to accept or reject the comments and sending it back?
Is their whole team, the IDE, Ridgewood, and what's the other one? Hewitt.
All right, so we as a city have sent them our comments,
We did.
and they accepted some and not some. So where do
What's
we
the next step?
We're still in the process of reviewing, they're having a meeting this Friday to look at all the comments and go one by one. So that's the next step.
Okay, and that's this Friday coming up.
Yeah.
All right. Would you characterize, this is very difficult, because this is what we're commenting on and we don't
Yeah.
even know anymore if this is relevant. What do you guys wanna do? Do you wanna just give him our comments and see if these were comments that they also had that are now on the table? How would you like to do this?
In order to be effective, Madam Chair, so that we know what we are doing and why we are doing it and what was accepted and why, you need, a draft after all the comments have either been entered or rejected, so you're looking at what is, not what we hope. Am I correct? It's.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of the comments that you have here, we had the same comments. It's just we gotta go through the next round, which is Friday.
Okay, but we have a problem here, don't we?
Yes. Well, I really don't see it as a problem if the committee would authorize at least the chair and one other person to review that final document so that we don't have to meet to do so.
Okay, James, you have some thoughts on this you're about to add?
Yeah, so some of my comments were really just questions, and maybe Omar or Chris or Alan's here now, someone can clarify them, so I understand what's trying to be said. But I actually would be curious to know, as we go through your comments or my comments or others, that, they say, oh yeah, we know about this, and yeah, that's not gonna happen, or whatever. I kinda wanna get some feedback from the Public Works Department officials.
Okay. Well, obviously we can't go through all of this. And could we, I hate to use mine and or Peter's and or yours as the only input, unless that's okay with everybody else.
I used Jeremy's, some of mine, but it's more general, and some of it I tried. So
Oh.
I'll,
That gives me a thought. Maybe we can just start with what were our general impressions and our unanswered questions. And rather than go point by point, line by line, and get some feedback from the staff but did you have those concerns as well? Because that will knock out a lot of
Yeah.
my specific question type things, I think. How about that? Can we do that? All right, so, do you wanna start us off, Roosevelt? What were your general impressions?
My concerns with any of these type of things is two. One is the content of the agreement and how it is put together, as well as the processing or the process of finding the bidder, whoever he or she they happen to be. Because both of those need to be followed, so then when you get those two things done, then we're where we are. And I look at what I consider to be a decent process and decent content. All we have to do is agree or disagree with what was said and how it was processed through the system.
Okay, the process is over.
Yes.
Okay, but it was a process, whatever
Yeah.
you may have, you may have had a different perspective on how we should have done it,
Yes.
that's not relevant anymore.
Not
The
anymore.
process is the process. The only thing I would say to that is that we are still in the process, that the comprehensive agreement, okay, is the final step in the process.
Mhm.
And the commission has, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, they have a number of choices. They can accept it, they can modify it, or they can reject it.
Sure.
They could at this point just say, looking at this, not really what we thought it would be. Or they could say, this is the best thing we've ever seen and we're going right ahead. I mean, it's up to them. It's not our call. But one of the questions in terms of process that I would like to clarify with the staff here is, what if the commission were to say, no? And really, no, we want out of this. What is our downside? What is our liability if they say no?
As of right now, there is no financial liability. We had an interim agreement where we're doing a lot of the analysis and things to put this together. But until the agreement is signed, we do not have there is no financial penalty if we decide that we just don't come to terms.
What about all the work that they've been doing? They have done a lot of work. They have 50% drawings, they've done inspections, analysis, borings. What happens to all that work? Do they just take it with them and walk away?
It is their work, it's not the city's work.
Yes.
it's like a
Sunk
normal
cost.
RFP proposal that people put a lot of work into their proposal.
Getting ready.
And it's at risk, right, and whether it's accepted or not.
Okay, that's a good process question. So, process we're fine. Ralph, what's your general feelings and concerns?
Generally, whether it was a P3 or RFP, I didn't find it as a comprehensive document. I would just I was gonna go through and pick and hit all the different things that I thought needed some comment. But I felt that, there's just too many of them, and generally, it needs to focus on the certain sections dealing with the participants of this of the project, to make sure that they have a finite understanding of what their responsibilities are without overlapping. And there may be some that have to overlap, but overlapping into some other participants' function. Otherwise, it's gonna be, the attorneys are gonna say, no, I interpreted this to mean this, and the other attorneys will say, no, this is how we interpret it, and we get nowhere fast. That seems to have been more typical with the P3 in previous projects that have happened throughout the country. That the attorneys start getting in a war, but make sure that or like with any contract, the function or the process is concise and identifies what comprises the success of the project, the accomplishment of that, as opposed to kind of leaving it undescribed right now. I'm not describing it too great, but I mean, it seems, it's got to be more definitive than what I read. And it's got to identify the goals and the functions of each participant that's included in this agreement.
Okay,
I
so,
don't know if that makes sense.
that makes perfectly good sense. So you have a concern about whether or not it sufficiently clarifies definitively who's doing what and on what time frame.
Correct.
Okay, did you all have any of those concerns about,
I have not heard anything said here yet today that was not also raised by the staff. Okay, and I think it's important to recognize that what you saw was the agreement, but there is a number of annexes that go along that provide the specifics about exactly what is being built, who has responsibilities for which portions, and exactly how it will be built and operated. And that's part of what we're still working with them to define those annexes before the agreement is ready to be brought to a commission for any type of recommendation. I think we made a lot of progress over the last 6 months, but as of right now, we are still negotiating and working through that. And October 18th is, in my mind, very aggressive for us to get there in time to make a recommendation.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I noticed, there's a whole page in the back of appendices. And one of the most important ones, in my mind, was the labor agreement. What's the deal with the labor agreement? How is that gonna work? They're gonna work for, the staff works for us, just as if they were just as the guys doing Pee Wee work for us. It's the same, they're our employees. They get a raise, everybody gets a raise, they get a benefit agreement, everybody gets a benefit, a pension. And the only people who are gonna be working at this plant from the P3 people are managers. Okay, so they're gonna be managing people who don't report to them? Is that a cause for anyone's concern? How does that work?
Yes.
And I will say that is the labor services agreement that you have not seen yet and is still being negotiated with an external law firm on our part with them, is to work out details on how that would work. They're city employees, they would fall under all of the city policies for discipline, termination, promotions, everything would be as city employees. But the overall operation of the plant would happen through the company itself. So they would be directing how much is operated, when maintenance will be done. And that's a balance that we're still trying to work through exactly what those responsibilities would be on their side and what's on our side. And that's why that agreement has not gotten to the form of a draft that's ready to be shared yet.
Okay, well,
That's when
do you anticipate that will be ready will be ready on October 18th?
The city attorney has said if everything is not ready on October 18th, then we won't be bringing it then. So it has to be ready at the same time.
That's good to know. That's excellent to know. All right, James, your concerns.
Well, I mean, it was quite a heavy document, a lot of legalese. Some of it seemed pretty boilerplate to me, but I'm not a lawyer, so I don't really know if it is or not, but it felt like boilerplate. What was most relevant to me was the first 20 or 30 pages, and that's where all of my questions are really. I don't know, I mean, I had like 10 or 15 questions and I just wrote them down as I was reading the document. It didn't make sense to me. You guys can probably answer all of them without any problem. Overall, it's a major document. I think Alan was being politically correct by saying it's aggressive. This isn't gonna be ready by the 18th. I think we can look at this and just say it's not gonna be ready by the 18th. So, maybe the pressure's off of us a little bit in terms of providing our feedback. We don't know what the second version's gonna look like yet. Might not see that for a while. So, I don't know what to say, Marilyn. I mean, I'd like to have my questions answered, but if it's gonna be a waste of time for people, then that's fine.
Can I suggest, because in a minute,
Okay.
actually, no, you first.
I don't think that you should see it as a waste of time. It's something that you want to know. You're the part of this committee, you are asked to be an advisory. So whatever you need to know or want to know should be
yeah.
made available.
All right, thank you,
That's
Roosevelt.
the way I feel.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Okay, so we will get to individual questions after we have this round.
Okay.
Shane?
My stuff is mainly technical, so I don't wanna belabor it if it's all changing anyways.
Okay. All right. Gerald?
I had one that leverages off of one of your comments. I know by reading this document that they call it the project schedule because it's defined in terms, so there is a project schedule. That I understand by reading this document, it has milestones on it. But then one of James's comments, for example, it's circular. One of James's comments is, okay, if this thing doesn't start up within 18 months of when it was supposed to, then there's ramifications of that, there's an outcome of that. Does the project schedule or the project plan have in it milestones? So it's the discrete question. What happens if this milestone that was to happen on this day doesn't happen? Right, everything that I'm used to doing, you stop until that's fixed. You don't say, well, it's a breach of contract, so you guys gotta go home now. It's a, you spent this much time, you spent this much money, you expended this much labor, you're supposed to be here and you're not. What are you gonna do to get back on stream with each one of those, so you avoid we got to the end and there's still 18 months to go?
Well,
If that should absolutely positively be in the project plan. You've gotta adhere to the schedule. You've got the nut to get that done, and you said it was gonna get done. I don't know if that exists in the project plan. It sounds mushy in here.
Mushy, that's a good general comment.
So-
Sounds mushy.
I've had a lot of project management experience, and there's always a critical pathway. And
Right.
you've gotta hit each one of those elements. So what I think Jerry is saying, like, with the way I'm understanding it, if you don't hit that element, you don't just throw in the towel and say, okay, let's, who's liable? It's like, okay, how do we fix this? Get it done. There's buffer probably built into the timeline. That gets sucked up trying to resolve that problem, and then you get back on track and you keep moving along.
Yeah,
That's how I see it. Now, I don't know if that's part of how you guys are approaching this or what, so.
No, and I think the difference is that this agreement talks overarching, once we get to a certain point and it's permitted and we give them a notice to proceed, then they start construction, they have 42 months to deliver, and that establishes the date at which liquidated damages start going into effect. But the schedule inside that window from when we authorize to there is completely on them. And typically, that's how most contracts are. All that risk falls on them. And if they start falling behind, we're definitely gonna be monitoring it and wherever it, but they would have to develop a recovery plan to get back on schedule. Our only penalties start occurring when they miss that final completion date, which I think it's
See,
called the
that's-
CMD.
Same general comment as it applies to the money. There's inflation going on. Time is our enemy.
Yes.
Between the inflationary spiral that we're in and the supply chain woes that we all have, the longer you wait, the more it costs, the less chance you are to get it. Okay? What is the controls in the annexes that says, for example, I just wrote one for another project that I'm doing that says, when we sign this, you have to buy all the long lead, special, and things that have shown to be caught up in the inflationary spiral now. You can't wait.
There is not saying you must buy, however, the agreement does say that once we sign the agreement, and if you remember when they did that presentation to the commission, the price went from $385 to $485
Yeah.
for the plant itself, because of exactly what we're talking about. When the agreement is signed, then they assume risk if they don't purchase it now when the prices go further. So it is on the company, and And that is being reflected in the drafts to clearly identify that that risk is on them as far as inflation for those parts that are within that 485 million part of the proposal. Now, there's other parts that the city is taking on for enabling works, and you saw references in there, and we talked about that in the presentation as well. Things that the city has to do to accommodate the plant, and that risk remains on the city. So if the cost goes up for the pipe to connect the plant to the 5-ash distribution center, then the city will absorb 100% of any inflation cost for those works.
Wait a second, Roosevelt was next.
Shoot, that one bothers me a little bit. Because when you get to that point, if someone wants to drag the feet just to get at the city, they can do that, but my other comment was, when we look at jobs of this size, we got to anticipate there's going to be change orders. And how will the change order affect that critical path that you was talking about, or that on time that you was talking about? Because, you know, if they're doing, extra work that we didn't foresee, that's gonna cause an additional month or 2 months of work, how do we compensate for that?
What was missing in this document, and we've had a lot of discussion on, is there will be a formal change order process. Because they are saying, and when we sign the agreement, we will know exactly what is expected that they will build and what's on our side. But like I said, something may change. We may find unforeseen conditions, or there may be a change in the need for how we're treating the water, which causes changes. So we're formalizing a process that will be in this document that will say how we will identify it and how we will determine the value of that to do a change order. Recognizing that, you know, the risk may be on their side or on our side. If it's something that they should have within their plan for, you know, they will take on that risk. But we have to have a formal change order process. Also in here, it talks about compensatable type events, you know, for delays. If a hurricane comes through and, you know, it takes us 4 months to get back to work because of the severity of it, obviously, that's gonna result in a delay in a change order, but it's not gonna fall on them because of, you know, it's outside of their control. And trying to define.
But it's outside of our control also.
No, but that's just one example that, and it's not completely worked out yet exactly what would be a compensatable event
Okay.
that we would allow them more time or more money, and what is within their side of the risk. But that's definitely a huge concern, because there are things that, as much as we think we know about what they're proposing and they're gonna build, things will come up or that we'll have to deal with, and having a process to evaluate them and decide, does it justify time, money, or other impacts to the agreement? It will be captured in a change order.
You know, brought up liquidated damages, just for clarification for the rest of the folks, is liquidated damages is just limited to like the cost of staff, personnel. It's not a penalty or anything like that, so, but it would be helpful to have those terms identified so that people will understand, oh, well, they've got liquidated damage. No, that's not gonna cover something that's damaged like that. It's only gonna cover the staff's hourly rate or whatever it is for that. But,
The liquidated damages also will cover the additional cost of continuing to operate 5-ash, because until this new plant comes online, we have the expense of continuing those services. So it's gonna recognize that cost.
that just shows that there's gotta be a lot of more clarification, because somebody that hasn't been in contract administration, I have, would say, oh, liquidated damages. There may be other terms that they need to, thank you, may need to understand what the consequences or benefits may be. There may be something that you dangle a carrot out there and saying, if you're able to complete the project ahead of time, there may be a bonus or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of things that I guess come into play when you have a contract, and you're trying to get them from here to there in a completion without getting bankrupt.
Okay, my general feeling about it is very much what James has said. This is just not ready for prime time. There are so many open questions, not only questions, specific questions, which we would like to get to, but to me, there seems to be a lack of clarity in who's responsible for what and what are the penalties. Because if you know, from the point when you give them the notice to proceed, they've got 48 months or something to build this. And then within that 48th month, there's a whole number of series of relief events and change orders. And we could be here for 8 years before we get to liquidated damages, okay? So I'm thinking that maybe there is something besides, or some penalty besides getting to liquidated damages. Not only because I'm a mean person and I wanna force them to get it done, but because we don't wanna wait to the 6 years to get to liquidated damages. We want solutions within the time period that, you know, if they go into bankruptcy, if they abandon the project for, I think it was like 30 days, if they abandon the where are we getting our water in the 30 days when they're abandoning the project? And, you know, there's a lot of unclear things to me about who's responsible for what and what are I don't wanna say penalties, but what are the solutions? I think you used that word. What are the solutions to deal with these things that we all know will happen along the way? I mean, there's so many, I mean, even you enumerate a great deal of possible things that could happen, and then there's, you know, there's the always, you know, besides which, in addition to, that we didn't even think about yet, and I think it's gonna come up.
And it will come up.
Yeah, so I'm generally, I'm concerned that this is not ready yet, okay?
And I would like to caveat that by saying the document that you got was one day after we received it, and it is a document
Yeah, no, I mean-
crafted by lawyers using lawyer speak, and the engineers and other professionals haven't really dug into any of that yet, so there's been a lot of comments reflecting exactly what you were saying.
Good, I'm glad.
So we absolutely, at that point in time, what we got here is far from what the final agreement needs to be.
Okay,
But it
cool.
was a starting point to begin the conversation.
So,
Peter's not here, and I don't really wanna speak for him, but he, in his notes or comments that he submitted, was all about water rates.
oh yeah,
All about
oh
the
no, we
money.
haven't even started on the water rates.
And I just wanna say, I thought I understood it, but after reading his, it's like, I don't know what
Yeah.
we're doing now. Is that in any way getting addressed in these new revisions or
Water rights,
rates, water
Rates.
rates? A discussion on rates or how they're calculated?
When we talked last time with Peter about his water bill, right? That's what you're talking about?
Yeah, and he submitted comments, he's not here tonight or today to talk about it. But it was quite, I don't know, I got confused reading it, so.
May I?
Yeah.
Thank you. Water rates is, to me, remember when we started this, our concerns were the ownership of the project, the quality of the water, and the rates, okay? I think you got the ownership of the project down. I mean, you know, we own the site, it's very clear. I'm not sure that we own the facility, because it doesn't clearly say we own the facility. I would love, if I was the attorney, to make sure that it just doesn't say project site, it says water treatment plant. But that's a legal thing that I'm sure you're gonna work out and make sure that we own the actual physical plant, okay? We own the water, and that is a good thing, but it's also a problematic thing, because we have to supply the water. And we don't know what the quality of that water is going to be over 30 years. And we have to give them a certain quality of water, otherwise now there's more costs involved. God knows we gotta do a pre-treatment plant to the treatment plant. I don't see any acknowledgement of that, I don't see any concern for that. Number one, on the issue of quality of the water and control of the water. Then on the quantity of water, okay, it's 50 million gallons per day, minimum of 17 million gallons a day. Going right into the rate issue, the way I read it, we're paying them every day for 50 million gallons of water, whether we use 50 million gallons of water or not. Please clarify if that is true.
that is true.
Oh, that is horrible. Why are we doing that? Why are we doing that? I mean, I understand that you have to pay off the capital costs of the facility, and that's usually what this availability payment is all about. FP&L, when you read your bill, there's your little portion there that says everybody pays $3.10 whether you use it or not. I understand availability. But the whole calculation of the $80,000 a day, it says that includes everything, you know, it's just one rate. It doesn't break it down, it doesn't tell you where it came from, what is it composed of, do the various things change it's so opaque. The calculation of the availability payment is incredibly opaque and to me doesn't have any relationship to the rates. I can't make that relationship to the first 5 years, we're gonna be spending $162 million for this water. And I can't make that connection to where the rates are going. Please, help me.
Okay, so the availability payment is actually got two parts on it. It is payback for the initial cost of building the plant,
Right.
and then also it includes an amount over the course of the 30 years to pay for operation and repairs of the plant, to maintain it, replacing pumps or other pieces on it. It does not include the electricity or the chemical costs,
We
and
understand
those are the two things that, the variables that will change based on how much water is being produced. But the amount of maintenance and repair you do in the plant over the course of the 30 years will be consistent whether we're producing 30 or 45 million gallons per day. So, and that's why that portion is going to stay the same once we lock in the agreement, how much we're paying, because it's based on a known amount of capital costs that they will invest and the city will be investing, and a expected amount of maintenance and repairs that will occur over expected. So that's the way that part was structured. Now, what we have in here is also a separate bill for the electricity and the chemicals that will change based on how much we're using each day. And we forecast several months in advance how much we will need to use. You know, it's certain times of the year we have higher water usage, less. But we work with them on how much they will actually produce to maintain the city's water tanks at a certain level. We're saying 90% full at all times is the goal. And then based on how much it costs for that production, we're paying for more or less chemicals, we're paying for more or less electricity. So that's where it fluctuates based on actual usage.
Right, so that is in addition to the availability payment.
Yes.
How about labor? Is that in addition to the availability payment, or is labor in there as well?
Labor it's city employees, so we're already paying for the cost of those employees that will be
Management
It's-
labor.
The only labor cost that's in that availability payment is the management labor costs.
Yes.
That's worse. Because now we're paying for the electric, we're paying for the chemicals, we're paying for the workers, and we're paying them this availability payment. How about, let's hope it's not worse. How about the payment on the bonds that we're gonna have to raise to pay our percentage, our 75%? Is that in the availability payment?
No, that is not.
Oh, okay, good to know, good to know.
But that's
Where
a
are we
fixed
getting all
cost,
this
Alan,
money
what
from?
you're talking about.
yeah.
That's all fixed cost. Like if they only make 10 million gallons a day, we only pay for the 10 million for the electricity, chemicals, all that. So that's a variable cost.
Yeah, we're all in agreement with that. So
So
When I added
the
up-
total cost of operation is more than just, you know, this $80,500 per day, because we are paying for the electricity, we're paying for the chemicals, we are paying for the employees who will be there,
we are paying for the bonds that we have to raise.
and we are paying for the bonds that we'll be using to finance.
And-
And that gets worked out through the rate model, which will determine what the final payments are that residents make. And you did see, there was that one spreadsheet, I think we talked at the last meeting, where it projected how much the rate increases would be over the next 10 years. Obviously, as we bring this to conclusion, they will have to rework those numbers a little bit, but that did show you how much it expected to go up overall within the utility. You know, including both the cost that we're paying to them plus the additional costs that we have. trying to really recognize all of the costs of this project.
So the presentation that Peter references, when Santec made their presentation about what the rates were gonna be, that was not based on this agreement yet, that was prior to this agreement?
I'm trying to remember when, I think that presentation was a couple months before, so the numbers were different. But I think when we did that, the last presentation to the commission, and I can't remember if it was 116 or 118% increase over the course of 10 years, that was based on
That was the new numbers.
the 485 million.
Yeah, but they didn't know about all the things that are going into the availability payment, the electric, the labor, it just seems to me that we just don't know how much this is gonna cost. It's just so open-ended, and to me, that would be my first comment. My major comment to the commission is, based on what we've seen so far and what you've explained to us, there is no clarity on each of the components. I mean, you just told it to me, but you wouldn't know that from reading this.
No, you would
No,
not.
you wouldn't. So there's no clarity on what are the components, and all the costs associated with it. And at the end of 30 years, what have we paid? I did a rough calculation, it was close to, $800 million at the end of 30 years. Well, this is only $480 million to build it, $800 million, and that was not without, I just multiplied 30, I didn't multiply the inflation. So you could be looking at $1 billion over 30 years to build and operate this plant, in addition to everything else that we have to do. It just seems to me that the commissioners should know this. They shouldn't look at that Santec thing and just, oh, it's 5%. I mean, the citizens should be aware, that's a lot of money. I think it was Susan Grant who said, building the plant was a throwaway for them. For them, it was the contract to operate, that's where the big bucks was. That was their comment. Yes, Susan?
With all these unclear expensive that we're looking at, will there be a public hearing or a public notification to me, the user, to tell me exactly what I'm paying, or it's so too exact that you can possibly get? Because right now, I don't think we're nowhere near it close. I mean, how do I say, okay, go ahead?
So the next step is, as we work through this agreement, and the commission is gonna ask, what's the cost of this you want us to approve? And we have to be able to explain that to a lot more degree of certainty than what you all have seen so far. And that's what their expectation will be, and that's what we owe to them. But that discussion is probably going to happen in conjunction with a city commission meeting, and the notification of that meeting that this item is on there is going to be, that will be the notification to the public that they're considering it. And now, whether it happens on the 18th, it happens in November, when we notify that they're considering this, and we're gonna have the discussion, because we don't have discussions with them all outside. So that's when the public will get
But
notified as well.
you will drown the public in numbers if you do that. And not only at a commission meeting, but in conjunction with everything else they're gonna hear before they get to that. How do me, the little user, is gonna go home and say, boy, I got everything those guys said down there, I know exactly where I am. When I leave that committee, even me now leaving the committee, I probably don't know what the hell going
What
on.
about,
I'm not gonna know what I'm paying for.
what about a conference meeting? What about a conference? I understand what you're saying, that you can't talk to them, sunshine and everything, we love sunshine. But this is so important. Understand, for the general public to understand the various components. We do, every time you do one of those Santec presentations, my eyes glaze over and I get a headache. Nobody can, who can read that? Nobody can read that, all right? I assume if we sat down and we went over it, we could read it, but that doesn't happen in a public meeting,
No, it doesn't.
okay? So, and the materials that you get out for that public meeting, 2 days before, they give you the backup. If you're lucky, you get the backup on the site, and the general public. You may get it. I mean, that's not gonna work.
The timeline that we're on right now, I don't know if the city manager would put it on a conference agenda or not. But I think whether it's at the conference agenda or at the commission meeting itself, there needs to be more discussion about, in the public, about exactly what the agreement contains and what the city responsibilities are and their responsibilities and all that. So
We all
I
agree with you,
that.
but I don't understand how that's gonna happen.
I don't either.
And the public's gonna be looking at, already it's been a high order of confusion. The first,
Yes.
Young report with 25, 30, 15, saying it's gonna be doubling in
It's all
5
over
years'
the
time. And now we're currently in the 2023 fiscal year with a 7.6%. So it seems like we're not in a definitive understanding what's going to be, what our rates are gonna be.
Yes, sir,
Make
yes, sir.
a suggestion, can we send a memorandum to the city commission and the city manager about our concerns on this and how we feel it should be addressed to the public?
The only way we can communicate with the commissioners, other than individually, call them, and don't email and send it to every one of them together, because I get slapped every time I do that. Only send it to your commissioner, okay?
That's the only way.
That's the only
Well,
way.
what about city manager?
Well, that's different. We can talk to the city manager, we certainly, we could send him a very good idea.
Why don't we call him? Can he think he's available?
Oh, yeah,
I will.
See if he's in the
I doubt
office.
he is not in the meeting right now, knowing his schedule, but I'll text Susan and see if.
check. Well, you bring Susan up. We could funnel it through Susan to him. But that's a very good idea.
I think so too, because they had to leave.
And I will tell you, I will not be here on the 18th if this goes to the commission. So somebody's gotta step up if we're gonna do that. Now, I'm sure they're not gonna, well, I should say I'm sure they're not gonna. I should not say that.
But I understand the suggestion of trying to get to the commissioner, try to get to the city manager. But even when we do,
No ability.
they're gonna send us back staff to work with. So we need to be working hand in hand with staff, so the staff understand what it is that what we are concerned about. So that when they do a presentation to the commissioner, to the city manager, they would include our concerns. When you kick it up to the top, kick it back to the bottom and say, here are the people you gotta work with. Well, hell, we're already working with them, and they've been good.
Mhm.
Yes, they have.
They've been good, and I don't want them to leave here believing that we don't trust their ability, and that's what we're talking about.
So maybe if we can't get Susan, or maybe we should send a memo to the staff. Now, that happens on a number of occasions, I've done that, and the staff has the ability to amend our comments to whatever documents they prepare for them.
That's all I'm asking. That's all.
So maybe that's the way to go. We do that at planning and, I do that at planning and zoning. I work with the staff, and the staff has their conditions and what they send to planning and zoning, and then they send a little memo saying, we had a meeting with so-and-so, and these were their concerns as well, and they send it up. They
But you
push it.
can't do that on your own.
No,
I mean,
no,
you could
no,
have-
no, we can only do it as a committee.
As a group,
Oh,
right,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
I mean, a very small and reasonable communication to the commission could be, we've reviewed the document, and we have the following concerns, and we don't think it's ready for a vote until these things are resolved, and the public has the ability to understand this better. I mean, I don't wanna word it, but we could do that. No, Susan?
I
Okay,
sent the text,
all
you know,
right.
they were both in meetings at 2:00, so
All right.
Yeah.
we'll see if they respond.
Maybe they
back or
would in
not.
a few minutes. Give them a few
Okay,
minutes.
all right, so that was, let's keep going. Were there other questions that you had? Because there were other questions that I had. Can you just throw them on the table? If that's okay, while we're thinking. The field office. I'm an architect. I know that, you guys need access to the field office all the time. But the way it's written is you have to tell them when you can get access to the field office. My question to you is the field office accessible from a public right-of-way? Like you could just, drive up and walk in? Do you have any concerns about the limitations on your access to the field office? Now, oh, wait a minute, we also have to build. Oh, wait a minute.
That has changed.
Oh, thank
Okay,
God.
okay. It is their field office for their project, and they will be constructing it and operating it. Our responsibility is going to be to, the connection to the water and the wastewater at the site, because we have to allow them to connect in. But, the way it's being written is, if we want to bring other people into there, we need to coordinate with them ahead of time, so it doesn't interfere with operations. But we will have either, city staff, and we will have, the owner-builder representatives who are directly involved with the project, well, they will have access. So we'll be defining who will be able to go in every day because of their job and responsibilities. But what they don't want is, we call up and say, we've got 20 people and we wanna bring them and show the project, and it interferes with what they're doing. So that's why they wanted a couple days' notice to prepare for it.
Okay,
And we separated those two parts of the agreement.
all right, so we no longer are responsible for building and maintaining the field office?
Correct.
Okay, but we're still responsible for the security and lighting and cameras of the site, which we would have had to pay for if it was ours anyway. But that's another point, that's an operational point.
Actually, that is being rolled into the cost of the project, is the security of it. They're responsible for the fence line, so we had discussions about if they are operating it, who is the better person to provide for the security? Of course, we will review and approve a security plan, working with them on it, and the city, but they will be responsible for the security itself now.
So that's a major plus, getting that out, getting that rolled in, okay. Other question?
Yeah, I can't
I
sit
can
here
cross
and,
that out.
and not let this go by, and I know we might not be in that, only in the comprehension of the contract, but I'm still having, ulcers about the location of the plant on the Prospect Development site, which is abutting the FXE airport. I mean, the runway, the West 927, if something happens to the well field, it may just take out, several wells. And, we had that problem back when they hit one of the, what was it, the 36-inch or 34-inch raw water pipe when they drilled in there. Yeah, I mean, it shuts down the system. When you're putting a plant on that well field in that precarious location, that still concerns me. It gives me heartburn to think we're putting all our eggs in one basket. And, I would rather see some intuitiveness on maybe connecting the Dixie wellfield site from the south on up in the case of something like that. But maybe we're not that far along. But that's a design concern that I have, and I can't just sit here and not mention that.
Oh, well, Ralph, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I mentioned in one of my comments, if we're paying for 50 million gallons a day, and we're really only calling for, let's call it 25, okay? But we're paying them for 50, why don't we connect this one to the Pee Wee and take some of the load off of Pee Wee? I was thinking in the same way, that if I'm paying for 50, damn it, let me use the 50.
Well, that is connected in a way, so we can turn off Bill Dixie and use the water from the new plant. Shut off Bill Dixie if we had to, because some of those pipes are connected.
It could be diverted and into Field Dixie's outflow.
That's good to know. And also on the availability payments, one of the other things I noticed, and you tell me if I read this correctly, when we have downtime, either at Five Ash or at that plant, we're still paying the full availability payment. And it seemed to me that was outrageous. I mean, I don't mind paying the portion of the availability payment that relates to things that, are ongoing, like we have to pay off the bonds and things like that. It seemed to me rather generous to be paying them the full availability payment including downtime, their downtime and our downtime. Did I read that correctly?
That's being worked out in the agreement where, like Alan said, the tanks have to be at 90% at all times. So if they have downtime, they still have to be producing water. They have to have redundancy, and that's part of the agreement. So we're gonna be paying for the water, but they're gonna be producing it.
So it's not like they're not producing it. I didn't read that correctly.
And,
That's good.
and the initial agreement here talks about their ability to shut things down, and we've had a lot of discussion about, we can only shut down the plant for so much because we have to be able to maintain water supply, so, I don't think at any point in time you'll see a complete shutdown of the plant now. It will be phased or broken to pieces for maintenance purposes only, but still being able to maintain production capacity.
And I had another specific question having to do with the water quality guarantee. They have to guarantee us a certain quality. One of the issues of a default is if they fail to provide that quality of water, and there's an issuance by governmental authorities of a second boil water notice with respect to the water, that's a default. But it doesn't say during what period of time. Is it like all 30 years? Or is it like in a year or every 6 months if we get 2 boil water notices, just to bring this to your attention while you're working on this? I mean, 30 years is a long time, for that to be a default. It could happen in the first year, it could happen in the 29th year, and it's not a default. So it's not a default unless it's further defined in terms of the duration, just to bring it to your attention, okay? And that relates to the kind of issues that Jerry brought up, that, it's this wishy-washy in terms of what are the consequences and how do we resolve problems rather than waiting 48 months and going to court.
And that's been part of the discussion is, in the annexes, what we want to have is a clearly defined standard as to what the quality of the water will be coming out of the plant.
We got that.
All of the conditions that they have to meet, and thank you very much for doing this. Okay,
Hey.
if they do not meet those
Hi.
conditions,
Hey,
then
that's double load.
I guess you're one.
so I'll defer this question while we have the city manager here, and then we can go back to that portion later on. I know this time is very valuable.
Hey,
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, for coming. I appreciate it. I know you're busy. Okay. We would ask you, we have some concerns. I would say we have significant concerns having to do with general issues and specific issues. And we are asking you for what you think is the best way we can communicate these concerns, given the time frame that we're working in. So if I could sort of, I don't want to summarize, everybody's going to add to this, but I'll try and summarize. Our main concern has to do with one of our 3 primary concerns originally was the water quality, the ownership of the water, the quality of the water, and the water rates. And our primary concern, but not only concern, is with the water rates. And this is largely because I think it's not transparent how much this facility is going to cost and what impact it's going to have on the rates. And we've just established today that the availability payment in the draft that we have, which may not be, the final draft, the availability payment does not include the electric, the chemicals, the labor, or the bond payments that we are paying for our portion of the capital construction. So as big as that availability payment is, based on the full 50 million gallons, which we may or may not use, which is a whole nother subject, why are we doing that? I don't think we don't understand how that relates to the rate increases. And if we don't understand it, and we have you here to tell us about it, even if you could explain the whole thing perfectly and we could all walk away and say, gee, that's great. I don't think the general public would understand it without some further, information, the graphics, documentation, and we're concerned that the public will get to the commission will get to a public hearing in which there will be several things and everything will get, sort of squished around and nobody will understand. We're looking for and looking to you to help us find a way to make that information clear to the layperson, to the consumer, before the commission actually votes on this.
Got it. So help me understand something. The presentation that Susan provided to the commission, was that done here? I'm just trying to understand.
Actually, some of us saw it, but no, it was not provided. You're
Okay.
talking about the Sandtech.
No, there was a presentation 2 meetings ago.
Okay.
Yeah, that one.
PowerPoint, the
That
PowerPoint.
power, you've seen the
We've
slides.
seen that.
And
Was
do we
that done
talk-
here at this level?
No.
We talked through a lot of those at the last meeting,
Right.
the points that were in.
Yeah.
So let me just, couple things
Okay,
if I could. So the rates, so again, for a presentation, it was high level, right?
Right.
Here's the amount, here's what we expect over 10 years, that the rate increase would be 139%. Here was the water bill, here it is. What that includes, so your question is the 80,000
500.
a day. And then we added the cost of the chemicals. Then we added the cost of the city's debt service on the 75% of the 485 plus the 150, and the electric. So and then we came up with a total, a delta, and we gave that to Stantec, and they put that in the rate model. So your question is, are those additional numbers, is it in bigger picture, everything in what we put into that rate model? The answer is yes. So all those things were accounted for, but again, we didn't want to get into the weeds, but I have a big old spreadsheet that has all those details for the entire 30 years of the agreement. So so all that should be that's all inclusive.
So one thing that I was gonna recommend, because obviously there's a lot of interest on understanding the numbers, and we wanna give you that assurance of what we're publishing and what we're still negotiating. We haven't finalized anything, but we were just showing progress on the negotiations. It's very important that the commission, the public knows what are we, assuming, where are we arriving? And so what I wanna say is, or what I'd like to offer is that, concurrently, as we provide the update to the commission, that we also share that presentation with you here, and also give an opportunity for you to answer or ask any questions, and let us answer any question that we have, and have a little more of a dialogue, because I'm sure that you will you can have probably more questions than the commission, because you're very involved, and so we certainly want your buy-in and everyone here, so we want to have that level of transparency with you. So but I will tell you that right now, as it is, we are still negotiating, and we still don't have all the final numbers. There's things that we are still telling them that's your responsibility. It's not our responsibility. And I have full trust that Susan and Alan are doing their best. He's looking at it from functionality, operational, technical feasibility. Susan's looking at it from a financial, does it make sense feasibility? And we certainly are not gonna propose something that doesn't have that value. So I wanna give you that assurance, if possible. I mean, and right now, Susan, and Alan, what is the latest status on this? Because I'm still expecting certain certain responses are pending from IDE, correct?
Yeah, so we've got a draft, the latest draft of the comprehensive agreement and the majority of the annexes. Yesterday?
Yesterday we received them. To be honest, haven't even been able to review any of that stuff yet. But we have a meeting with them tomorrow afternoon to start working through that, to see if we agree with the way things are being rephrased, that they have things in the right bin as far as responsibilities, that we've quantified a lot of those things that are kind of fuzzy in this first version.
And then on the financial side, the availability payment, in order for us to be able to do the financing, we've had our bond counsel involved. We're having to bifurcate that availability payment into an availability payment and what we're calling is a separate payment. But the total would still be that same 80,500 a day. That piece doesn't change in this. But as Greg said, just even the other day, there were a couple items that they said, hey, this wasn't included and this wasn't included. And Al and I, on the phone with them, said, no, your credibility's on the line, our credibility's on the line. You include this. And they came back 3 days later and said, okay, that's included now. So we're pushing, just so you know, we're pushing back. We're not just, rubber stamping this. I know the 139%'s a big increase, right? I live here too and pay the water bill just like everyone else does. But it's a $600 million water plant when you look at the enabling works and whatever, and that doesn't come without a revenue stream to support the debt service.
Roosevelt.
And one other thing, the labor services agreement. We have a draft of the draft that they sent us. We sent off the comments, and we actually have a labor council working on that. Brett Schneider, who does a lot of the labor work for us, we have him working on it. We shipped off to them all our comments on the labor services agreement just today.
I want to talk a little bit about labor.
Yeah.
So I understand there are concerns about, the labor and the workforce. And, I was once a union member, right?
As was I.
Right? And so I cherish that a lot, right? And that's important to us as well. But I want to just tell you that what we're proposing for a labor agreement is nothing foreign to us because we already have something similar to that. And I want to talk a little bit about what we do today to service our fleet vehicles. Our fleet vehicles are serviced primarily by two outside organizations. We have the mechanics that service our vehicles is one organization that we do business with. What's their name?
I don't know, we just changed over.
We just changed over to them, right? Okay, and we also have another organization that provides the parts to this other organization, and we have city staff that oversees this whole operation. So, and we have city staff that also is involved with quality controls, is involved with their management and making sure that we get the value that we pay for. In fact, one of the reasons why we changed companies right now was because we weren't getting that value. And so I just want to provide the assurance that we already have some level of configuration to what is being proposed here, that we are not doing away with our labor force. We value that, and we feel that the labor force always will provide us our best interest. And at the end of the day, it is our facility. It is right now, I feel like we feel that this is a procurement mechanism that allows us to streamline and get to the water quality that we need in a prompt manner. Because every year that passes without a water treatment plant, we are at a threat that a hurricane can pass here, and we are then impacted much severely.
Good, thank you. That's very good about the labor agreement. I'm happy to hear that. But, and we would have to pay for the labor whether it was, they were doing it or we were doing it. We'd have to pay for the labor, so I'm comforted that the labor is being taken care of. But how did you get to $80,000 a day? Plus the escalation. I mean, when you add that all up, that's a lot of money, and it seems to be a lot more money than it would cost us to build a plant and even maintain a plant. It's like you spent the same amount of money maintaining the plant that you spent building it over the 30 years.
And sometimes, when you look at what repair and replacement costs are, those are pretty consistent with when we were looking at the Joint Governmental Center. They were saying to estimate, I think it was 5% a year of the cost of the project for, repair and replacement, which would be basically you were over 20 years paying the cost of the building. So, and that's all included in that. So it's the cost of the plant, the cost of operating the plant, certain items. So that was the price they quoted us, and then what we've negotiated down. I think it's $1.61 per 1,000 gallons, based at the 50,000 MGD.
Again, this is one of the questions we
Yeah.
had. Why are we paying for 50? Everybody asks this question. Why are we paying for 50 if we're not using 50?
And you said that's the way they quoted it, because that's the plant capacity. Their cost of either borrowing the money or their cost of capital is the same no matter how much they're building a plant that can have that much capacity. So they could have just as well quoted it as 80,500 a day. But they just divided it and said, by the number of gallons. So it's just a different way of saying, here's your mortgage payment. If you want to divide that by the number of bedrooms you have, or just say, here's your mortgage payment, I think it was just a different way of
Perhaps
quoting the rate.
Perhaps availability payment was the wrong word to use, because
That's-
it's not what we're making available to you.
Uh-huh.
This is what it costs to build this facility and to return on our investment for 30 years.
Yeah,
That's a long time.
It's a fixed cost.
yeah, it's a fixed cost.
It's a fixed cost, and I'm sorry, I wanna just get into the fixed cost.
Okay.
So we have on hand a quote that is a quote pre-Ian.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you something right now. What keeps me up at night is construction costs and labor availability, labor availability.
Sure.
I just wanna share that we are working, trying to get right now the police headquarters up from the ground. And that is something that right now, our latest quote is $42 million over.
Yeah, we know
Yeah,
that.
we're
We know that.
familiar. We're familiar.
We know.
And I tell you that my certainty about having those prices honored after the storm, is something that I have to make sure that they stick to that, right? And also that there is labor for that. So that's something that while it may sound like, oh, well, it's a fixed cost, but it's a fixed cost, and with the current conditions that are very volatile, I'm right now on phone calls with the police headquarters to see how we will be impacted with furniture,
Oh, sure.
even 3 years out from now. So I just wanna put that out there that, that is an advantage, the fixed costs of having something built in an amount of time. And if we can make sure that all the questions are answered and you feel comfortable, right, then we go together as a team to the commission, say, all right, this is based on all the conditions right now, not on the conditions from 2 years ago or 5 years ago. If this is today, then everything changed from a week ago. So I wanna just put that in perspective, because at the end of the day, we have to make sure, Alan has to make sure that they provide water service and so that, and also at a price that, I mean, while it seems very outrageous, right? I mean, there's other factors that may also impact any other considerations as well.
Roosevelt, you had a question?
And real quick, your question about availability payment, that's just a term that's used in P3s. That's what they call the annual payment, the availability payment. So
I
it
understand
seems like
that.
a little bit of a misnomer, I get it,
Yeah.
but that's just the term they use.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you,
Yes.
Madam Chair. Let me just say to both of you, thank you for coming. It make us think that we're important when you come that fast. But I just want to let you know, and I believe in giving people their flower while they can yet smell them. I think we are working with some real good people when it comes to this staff of people. And they have been with us, some of us been here like 5 years already, and we've done well. But ma'am, I just want, when we talk the 139%, and we talked the availability payment plus all the other things, was all the other things included in the rate when it was based on the 139?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that included the annual increases in labor. All the other amounts, it included the extra 200 million of just the bond program that's due to be issued next year. So that was taking what we had already and adding this on top of that. So yes, it included all those things.
Now, of course, leave it 12 rather than 11:30. Mr. City Manager, you spoke about keeping us, this committee, involved hereforth until that contract is signed. And I wanna thank you for that, but I guarantee you, we're gonna hold you to that.
Sure.
Because none of us sit here as a method of wasting time. We're dead serious about what we are doing and working with all these folks for this long period of time. And to have you, the two of you, to buy in to what we are doing, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Certainly, and your voice and your feedback is important to us. So,
And I normally don't even talk at these meetings, I told you this.
right,
Oh,
no,
right.
I'm not sure I believe that.
your feedback is very important to us, this group, because it would be most beneficial for the entire city as a whole to hear that we have discussed this at length and that we've answered as many questions as possible, and that together, we're in this together. 10 years from now, we gotta drink water.
That's right.
Is it gonna be yellow water, or is it gonna be coming out of plastic?
Well,
You know, so that's the long-term question, right? What are we doing today to secure the quality that we need for tomorrow?
before James, can I just ask you a question relative to how could we be together on this? I mean, I can certainly understand that it would be a good thing if we could go to the commission with a, yes, we've looked at this and it seems reasonable to us, God bless. In order to get to that point, the information that we're talking about here today has to be memorialized in some form. And perhaps you could send us a
Updates?
follow-up memo from this meeting saying, oh, yes, and we talked about, and these are the component parts, and these were all included in the Santec presentation in the 136, so that it's memorialized, and we can point to something and say, yeah, see? This is what we talked about, this is where it is, and people can agree with it or not agree with it, but at least we can, for our own benefit and for the benefit of the people who look to us for our opinion, there's gotta be something beyond just, our discussion here. So some memorialization of what we talked about today. And when you're in doing that memorialization, let me ask one more technical question about the components. We've got about $150 million worth of other stuff we have to do. Is that in the SIP already, or are we talking about putting that into?
We added, that was included in the 139 as well. So the city's 75% of the plant cost, which is the 485, plus 100% of the 150 million. We had our financial advisor, PFM, run us 30 years, and we did it on a level debt service basis and added that total number to these numbers, added the chemicals, came up with a number, handed it to Stantec, who input that delta into their rate model. And that's where the 139 came in. So the 150 is included in it already.
So that's what we need to know. That's what the people need to know. Yeah, yes.
Chair, would it be beneficial? When is your next meeting?
Not till November.
November 7th of November.
Because I was going to say, let's do a repeat of what we did in front of commission, and have you interact, engage, ask any questions you have, and even invite PFM here, because PFM has nothing to do with the proposer. They are a neutral party. They can tell you about the finances side.
He has Hayes and Sawyer.
He has Hayes and Sawyer. He's a PE, right? Okay, so he can tell you from an engineering scientific perspective the mechanisms that are going to make this function efficiently, effectively. I mean, that's what we can offer at the next November meeting if you'd like.
But what's gonna happen on October 18th?
So right now, I don't have a comprehensive agreement.
So I think everyone's gotten to the point that we don't think it's October 18th. I think we're thinking November 1st. I mean, I understand that's still after your meeting, but October 18th isn't
I don't think that-
realistic. And, I mean, all the parties are at peace with that, so.
We could do, if you'd like, we could do a meeting just on this before we're ready to go with a comprehensive to the commission.
Gentlemen? Yes? Let's do that. Let's do that. But
That's our commitment.
Okay, that's good. But in addition to that, I think it would still be very good if we could get from Alan perhaps a summation of what we talked about here, of the component parts, because that's very important.
I have them all, I mean, I have a spreadsheet that has
I know you do,
all-
and
yeah.
you got it all in your head.
No, and I mean, I could, like I said, give you the rate model that Stan Tech did and the input that I gave them to put into that.
Actually, I was just gonna, listen, can you bring the PowerPoint here and just talk about it
Can I
right
go
now?
get my
No,
computer?
actually,
I
we've
can,
seen the PowerPoint.
oh, no, I mean, I could get my
But you can
spreadsheet.
step through it if you want,
I
one
could get
more
my
time.
spreadsheet.
Yeah, if you want, so that,
I trust you. It's
Okay.
not that I don't trust you,
No,
I
no,
just
I-
wanna see it on a piece of
Yeah,
paper.
no, we can print out the spreadsheet and include it as, and the one sheet from the rate model that they put in.
So when
Yeah.
people ask me, oh, this is terrible, well, you know, it includes thus, and thus, and I have it from Alan, and it's on a piece of paper, and it's not just me saying it.
And then we tried, I mean, you know, we'll never know if we did it ourselves, how much it would cost, right? Until we,
No.
I mean, we don't know. So what we did is we made a few assumptions that, okay, if we finance this whole thing and we just had to use the 485, because that's the only number I know. And then we came up with what would the impact on the rate model be. And it was less, but again, not materially less. And the cost could be higher if it takes us 2 years
Yeah,
longer.
oh,
So-
that was the
so I could
decision
show
that
you
was made.
those, I could show you those too.
No, the decision's, not to me, I mean, that decision's been made, that horse is out of the barn.
The
So-
presentation,
Yeah, I'm sorry,
the
go ahead.
5-page presentation that you and Alan did, I mean, that page has everything you're talking about.
Well, no, but not the detail, not the
Right.
breakdown,
Right, but you can show that page first, and then if you want.
and how that ties into that, yeah.
Yeah, that would be very good. Is there anything else you don't get these people in the room at the same time, is there
No.
anything else we
No.
want from them before we let them go?
I
James?
just want to say one thing. City manager, and is it deputy city manager or assistant city?
Assistant, yeah.
Okay. Greg and Susan.
yes, sir.
Just want to echo some of the other comments about, appreciate you coming in presentation last week. When I left, or last month, I felt like I really understood the rates, and then we had some other internal documents, and I got completely confused again. So glad you were here to kind of bring us back. This is 8 people. We're on this committee, but there's 200,000 more people out in the city, and everybody's got an opinion on this water and the rate increases. And I'm not feeling like the city's doing a very good job about presenting the business case, why the rates are going up the way they are. And if you talk to people in the street, I mean, there's all these crazy ideas. It's this, it's that, it's this. Somewhere I think there's a misstep in communication from City Hall to the general public.
100%. I couldn't agree with you further.
So what can we do about that? Because other than having, 50 people come to our next meeting or whatever, screaming about water rates.
So something we need to do is better outreach. We need to have better understanding of what we're trying to do. I think one of the challenges we have right now is that because we're under negotiation, we kind of wanna hold certain cards back because this is all public, so then, our proposer knows where we're at with certain things. But certainly, you are right. This past week, this Monday, we just hired a new person that started with Stratcoms. Her name is Arlene Bornstein. She's a former NBC6 reporter, Sun Sentinel reporter as well. The idea behind that is we wanna increase our engagement and how we share the story, so that when you receive it, it's in a format that you're used to with the general media. So expect us to share better updates in a much easier way to digest.
That's great, but not within the next month. So within the next month, we have to produce some piece of paper, some document, some information
Yep.
that we can, address some of these questions.
So do you have a list of questions?
I think the things that we just talked to you about here, go to the top of the list on what are the components and how does it affect the rates. We also had a lot of questions, and you guys jump in anytime you want, on some of the timeline issues and what happens when this happens and how do why don't you do that one?
And the point that you brought up, Greg, time right now is the enemy. In the inflationary spiral, and the availability of materials, and now, because of the storm, the availability of labor, that's all putting upward pressure on how much this is gonna cost and how long it's gonna take, right? One of the things I've not heard is the fact that, what would it cost if we didn't do this? You know, the other part of the argument is, why are you spending all this money? Well, because, well, listen to Ralph, right? Because the one we got's gonna break. Right? The one we got isn't producing water, there's a reason we see you every month, that is of the quality, the modern quality that water should be. All of that has to come out too.
So in other words, you feel that we need to present a case of why we're doing this, justification further? Of why it's best to.
Not in defense of it, but just say, hey, look, here's the logic, here's the why behind the
Sure.
the what.
Sure.
We can probably explain how we got to this point, because a lot of those questions, I think, have been answered or decisions were made over the last several years about why should we replace 5-ash, what should we do next, so
Chronology,
We were
perhaps
talking-
it's a chronology.
it's
Yeah.
chronology, because it wasn't just now we're making a decision, but this has been building up over a period of years. If you're gonna have this meeting, we normally broadcast these, and maybe instead of having it just as an ITF meeting, we treat it more like a town hall, advertise it a little bit more so that we don't want 50 people all trying to jam into this room, but we could have 250 people watching online with an ability to maybe ask some questions virtually.
That's a great suggestion, a town hall. We got a town hall, we got a telephone town hall.
You know, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Again,
But still,
it's the why, the people gotta hear the why, James, right?
But still, you need something to distribute. Because there are a lot of people who will not come to a meeting, or they're working and they can't do that, they can't take the time off from work. But if you had a document, from the city to us or to the to somebody,
You're right.
saying, this is why we need to do it, this is what we're proposing to do, and this is the breakdown of all the things, all the dollars that have to go into getting this done, and we're concerned about labor and we're concerned about inflation. Time is of the essence, okay? And this is the impact it's gonna have on the rates. That's the
Got it.
that's the whole story.
So I just wanna
We're sorry, but this is it. You gotta pay for the water.
I wanna recap, just to make sure that, because I wanna do just that.
Okay.
Wanna do a one-pager, wanna open it up to a town hall, wanna bring you all the details that you need, so you feel that you receive as much information as we know. Case study, justification of why we are here. How do we get here? Understanding of water quality, what we have today versus what we can get in the future. Ownership of water, what happens to labor. An explanation of the water rates and what does the 139 include? Discussion or outline of the 50 million gallons per day in capacity, and how that also relates to the quote-unquote availability payment.
Good.
And also, I have here a summation of the components of the contract.
That's the same as what you just said. It's the
Okay.
summation of the components.
Okay, perfect. So we will do our best effort to summarize all this and give you as much as we know, so that when we present this, we've done as much as we exhausted.
Roosevelt.
Just briefly, I think a good ending statement on that would be, we are doing this now so we don't look like Michigan.
Or Alabama.
Yeah. And
Well, that's-
nobody wants to see that happen. And, people have a tendency to provide for what they need after they provide for what they want. But when you get to
this is
the water situation, none of us can live without it. And the community must know that, and nothing is free.
Nothing is free, you're right, and it brings me back to, his name is Crosby, he said quality is free. And, he meant that, if you don't pay now, you're gonna pay it later in rework or wasted work. So, you're right, nothing is free. I mean, what we tend to say, I'll give you a perfect example, police headquarters. It's a design build. Waste time, now we have a lot more money. Had there been other outcomes if this was maybe staged as a P3? I don't know, but I'll tell you this. At this point, what we have on hand is we have someone that's ready to do this. We're pushing to make sure they have all the details and conditions that we want. We're not rubber stamping anything. We're pushing back on the risk for what they're supposed to do. And we'll get you all those details.
Great, that's great. Does anybody have anything else they wanna add?
No.
How about time? How about,
Will the public be able to
okay,
get these
just a
details?
minute. Boyd,
That's what
just
I
a
wanna
minute,
know.
just a minute.
We didn't get a copy of the agenda.
So can I ask you a question about timing? If we're all in agreement that October 18th is, as Alan so diplomatically put it, aggressive, okay? And we will probably not be doing October 18th. When are you thinking we'll be able to, this is a hard question. When do you think we'll be able to put together that particular meeting and that particular document?
So I'll tell you this, I feel very comfortable that we can bring together a summary of components of the contract with all these details in a short amount of time. And this can be like something that we post on our website, share with the public, with everyone.
That'd be good,
Okay?
that'd be good.
just for us.
It's for everyone, this is what we're doing, okay?
Very good.
Okay? Just so you know, if I were to email anything to you, it's public record. Right, so,
Not with this contract, the draft contract, the public was not allowed to
Again,
see this till today.
Boyd, can I please,
2 weeks they had.
hold off. You have a great amount of time.
I'm gonna tell you, there's certain things under a P3 process
Okay.
that you can't share.
Okay.
And I'll leave that to the attorneys, I'm not an attorney. And what we can do though is share as much as we have, we'll put it in a concise format that's easy to understand. We can do questions and answer online, and we can even do a town hall.
Can we say that in 2 weeks, you might have some information
Yes.
for us on how to do that?
But I'd like to check in just to make sure that I have my bosses on board too, right? Because I'm sure they will wanna chime in. But nevertheless, I think this is very important. And I think we could certainly have this somewhere between 2 to 3 weeks, we could have a virtual town hall.
That'd be fantastic. All right, shall we leave it at that?
Yes.
Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, thank you for your
We're
time.
not throwing you out, you can stay if you want to.
I have
A little
people
work.
waiting for me downstairs. I took a pause.
You did.
I assumed you could start working on my piece of the slides.
And just so you wanna know why I'm here,
Yes.
ring in my washer.
Yeah, okay, that's why we're trying to get this solved.
No, thank you for
Okay.
sharing that.
Sure.
Thank you for sharing that.
And the
Okay,
new plant will still put out yellow or brown water.
Not if we can help it.
We will,
That's,
not if we can help it, I want you to know that this team is working very hard.
The plan.
They
You know,
sound
so
like
you
it.
know when our meetings are, 6 p.m. So we could be focused so nobody can interrupt us. These people have meetings up to 3 times a week at 6 p.m. Alright?
Give him a raise.
He's getting there.
Guys, let's not interrupt the flow of the meeting. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Okay,
Based on that, it sounds like the last week of October.
last
is
week of
the-
October is
the
fine.
right week to do it, and we can work through and try
Bye-bye.
to figure out a good time. And then we'll start building the meat on the town hall at that.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. All right, I think we've made a lot of progress today. So that would commence, that would finish up on the old business, old business, we're on to new business. Yeah, oh, no, okay, I'm sorry. Let's continue.
On the questions and everything that we submitted, you guys are looking at those, right? And like, oh yeah, this makes sense, or yeah, we already knew that one, or Jim, you're crazy, or whatever, you know, you're doing something, right?
I read through Maryland's, I read through Peter's. Did you send them to me, or I don't know if I saw yours, but I know I saw the other ones.
Well, they're in this one. They're in the big fat one.
Okay, and this is all copies of comments that I've received from different people that we've been consolidating. But yeah,
I'm sure it's huge. I'm sure
but
it's
we,
huge.
yeah, we are taking
Okay.
all yours, and we're trying to make sure that
Okay.
we have it all. We feed it all to Hazen and Sawyer, who are also doing a lot of reviews. And then, as I said, we're having multiple meetings with them to go over our concerns and comments and feedback. Because a lot of it is, we identified, this doesn't work right, you know, this phrase or this requirement, but then, well, what should we do? And we gotta come to agreement. So
Yeah.
there's been a lot of back and forth. And you hit, from the ones that I did read, a lot of the exact same concerns that we had when we first got the document.
Okay, good. All right. So I think I think we made great progress today. Most important thing I heard was the components, and that we're gonna have a process for making this information more fully and understandably available
Yeah.
to the general public.
Very good.
Okay, anybody else want to have anything else onto the old business? No? Moving on to Public Works update, September water and wastewater break report. Okay, before we get into the details, can I get an update from you on where we are on the consent order required mapping of the system, of the water distribution system? Remember the consultant who was supposed to, yes, hi.
So we have reached an agreement with the consultant and
Can you state your name?
Suleiman Wikani with Public Works, also project manager for the mapping. So we reached an agreement with the consultant. Right now we are doing paperwork to bring it to the commission on November 1st for approval, and then we will award the contract so that the work can come.
Fantastic, and you have a scope of services for that contract?
Yes.
Can we get a copy of the scope of services? Thank you very much. For everybody, just to remind everybody, this was the consent order required mapping of the water system, somewhat similar to the sewer system. So we did all that, we worked that out, and now we're gonna do water, right?
That is correct.
Excellent, okay, good to know. Apparently good to know because there's a lot of water breaks. So, I don't know, how much, detail you guys wanna get into in terms of the numbers here. Our sort of function here is just to keep monitoring and making sure that everybody knows that somebody's looking at this. Is there anything you wanna tell us about these numbers that look extraordinary to you? Other than in September we had 6 breaks?
Those are sewer.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was the sewer
I'm
numbers?
sorry, those are water breaks. We didn't have any sewer breaks in September.
Okay. Well, as I'm reading the water distribution breaks, under the comments, most of them is emergency repairs. What does that mean? It broke and you had to make emergency repairs?
Yeah.
Why did it break? Do we know?
I do not know why. I don't know, the operations folks can probably get into the details on each one of these specifics, but,
But they haven't brought to you that there's something peculiar going on, other than, occasionally a pipe breaks.
yes, and in general for water pipes, yeah, these are all minor ones, smaller ones, so it didn't raise to a concern. We did precautionary boil water notices if needed, if you lost pressure, but I don't think we've had very many of those in past months for unplanned repairs. I will say, if you look at the ones that have happened in September, most of them were leaks, not breaks. So I can't talk so much about what happened back in February, March, April.
I guess if I may,
Yes,
with
certainly.
Maryland, I think is looking for if these water mains happen to be in an older section where they were like cast iron, they've already maybe served their expected life, their life expectancy for 60 years or whatever, and they're starting to now fail, or is there something else that's going on?
Yeah, right, and typically in the wintertime where you have the thaw effect, the temperature shifting during the day versus night tends to cause more of them, but I'd have to find out more details on these ones. I don't know exactly where they occurred as far as age of the pipes or anything like that.
Okay, well,
These were several months ago.
all right, well, clearly, we're at the point with water that we were at the point with sewer like 3-4 years ago. We know things are breaking, but we don't have the full picture of the system, so that we can then take all the breaks, overlay it over the full picture of the system in order to start thinking about priorities. So, but we're working on that,
Right,
and
yes.
that's coming.
Yes.
It's been a long time, that contract, but, it's coming. All right, very good. Does anybody have any other questions about the water and sewer breaks?
Well, my only concern is I know that the city is doing everything they can to take care of the gravity sewer mains and trying to stop the II. But I had asked before about as a check as far as what the inflow, additional inflow to the Lomar wastewater treatment plant is. I'd like to see before we had anywhere from like a 30% higher. And if the work that has been done thus far with the reducing the II in some of those around the older sections of Fort Lauderdale, and so we're not getting the II into the sewer as much. It should be reflected on the inflow at the George T. Lomar wastewater treatment plant. And if there is some, comparison with what the work has been done and the reduction of the groundwater.
At this point, I don't think we're seeing a substantial reduction due to the I&I efforts, but I think it was recognized upfront that you have to do a lot of that before you will see it at the plant. Now, in the individual basins, not basements, where we are able to measure it, and Hayes and Sawyer did a presentation talking about electrical use and pump run times.
Yeah.
We are able to see it there.
The correlation.
But in regards to the overall system, we're just not at the point where we're really measuring a substantial difference that we can directly correlate to the I&I work. And that's why it's important, we gotta keep pushing those projects forward.
Okay. James, I noticed around town that they're flushing the hydrants all over the place. We must lose a lot of water flushing those hydrants.
But that is part of the free chlorination period
Yeah,
that we are required to do,
I
so,
understand.
and I think we're at the end of it for this
Yeah.
next period.
But I'm in a car with a bunch of people and they say, look, they're wasting water. No, they're not wasting water, they're flushing the system. Yeah. People just don't understand.
Recharging the groundwater, so the saltwater intrusion's going to
Go, push it back, Chris. Okay, all right, the other item was the financial report, which, I can't read these things. How are we doing on the consent order? Are we finished with the first 200 million? Are we meeting all our benchmarks?
I don't have the numbers, but we are, so in the consent order, the sewer part of it, we have made a lot of progress. I think right now we are left down to like about 4 projects remaining, construction projects. We still have administrative milestones that we have to meet, but some of the major projects, I think right now we are either in design or we are ready to enter into a DCP contract so that we can make progress.
Great. And when are we anticipating the next 200 million, which is included in the water rates, as you just said?
It is in 2023. And it's built into the CIP. We anticipate getting the funding then, we've started identifying the projects that will be funded with that. Although every year we'll reprioritize, and we're actually starting our CIP development over the next 2 months. We start building for next year, and that's when we're gonna really take a hard look at that $200 million bond.
Okay, do we have a priority list for the second 200 million like we had for the first 200 million?
Not yet.
No.
That's what we need to be we're focusing on, and probably January, February is when we'll be able to start talking through what the CIP priorities are and what we're building into the program. But that'll be the first drafts, and then, it takes months of back and forth to finalize what that list will be.
Fantastic, okay, progress. All right, does anybody have anything on the item number 4, the Public Works updates? Can we move on to our general discussions from the committee members? Committee members. I think we're doing good. I think we made a lot of progress today.
Yes, we did.
We clarified a lot of issues and set up a process going forward. Any other general comments that people have on anything they want to add? Okay, we are then at the public comments. Public comments.
Okay. As far as transparency goes, the public didn't even get a copy of the agenda until we walked into the room today. Now,
Wait a minute.
water comes
Can I
out
ask
of.
you a question? Wasn't the agenda in the backup materials?
Yeah, so there was an issue with the website, the webmaster is,
No
notified
backup
of it,
materials,
and
nothing.
they're working on it. There
Okay.
was an issue with, there was a glitch, but the agenda wasn't.
Not because we didn't want to, but because we had a problem. Sorry, I'm
We
sorry
were
about that.
completely in the
I'm
dark
sorry
on
about
this
that.
thing. Okay, you're talking about the color of water. You guys think that water is gonna be clear out of my tap. I got news for you. It's gonna come out of the new $600 million water treatment plant clear. But as it goes to the beach right now, it comes out of 5-ash green. And it turns yellow as it goes to the beach. It turns brown as it goes through rusty pipes. You're gonna get a lot of that. Don't think everyone's gonna get clear water. North Miami Beach signed a P3 contract similar to this, and then they backed out of that. So you guys need to build into this contract a bit of wiggle room in case the new commission is dead set against this contract. Nanofiltration wastes 5 million gallons per day. Okay, over 30 years, that's 55 billion, but you guys don't care about that. It uses an obscene amount of electricity. And the city, we found out today, is going to be on the hook for that. Tens of millions of dollars per year. Talk to other cities. Was it Hollywood that went to nanofiltration? And I talked to the mayor there, and he was grumbling about that. Okay, so ammonia. Nobody mentioned the word ammonia, and this is such a huge thing, okay? Reed's report says if we filter the water a little bit better, we don't need to use ammonia. Why do we use ammonia? To cheat on EPA water tests. That's all. It temporarily lowers the toxic chemicals that are federally regulated. But then when you, like right now, when you turn off the ammonia and do the free chlorination burn we're doing for 3 weeks, they shoot up to like 6 times the EPA levels. But you never test for trihalomethanes or haloacidic acids during these free chlorination burns. So the question is, how many free chlorination burn weeks are we gonna allow the new finance company, Israeli company, that's gonna be taking over our drinking water? It's a huge, huge question. Because ammonia creates a biofilm that needs to be burned off. And that's the big question. So let's see. So basically you can, when we're doing these hydrant flushing, right? Did y'all hear about La Preserve over in Tarpon Springs?
No, what happened?
No? About like 30 dead tarpons floated to the surface because of all the gunk, because of the ammonia in the water, or maybe all of those federally mandated toxic chemicals, the DBPs. We don't know why they died, but they died because they're swimming around in the crap that comes out of the hydrants. This is huge. Okay, so why don't you just consider saving $500 million, and just go back to the Reese report, $170 million. They say it only costs $7 million a year for carbon, as opposed to tens and tens of millions of dollars a year for electricity. And you won't have to put ammonia in it. You guys need to really look into ammonia. I just mentioned two things that it's got. Oh yeah, it weakens chlorine's ability to kill bacteria. What does that mean? You got this biofilm that's inside condo pipes, all right? Bacteria hides behind that, okay? And then the water plant says, look, we're putting out really good water. It passes all the tests. But the chloramine, which is ammonia and chlorine, builds up. It does really bad things. And back in 2018, when I had some campaign signs printed, the girl at the print shop said, yeah, I got hospital sick along with my friend visiting from the water because it was in the pipes of the condo building. And just to reiterate, ammonia weakens the bacteria killing ability of chlorine. So there you go, those are my comments.
Thank you very much. I just have a quick question. When we do this nanofiltration, right? We're not using ammonia anymore, are we? I don't know. I'm just asking the question. No.
Not on the process.
Then I want to ask you another question. When we get these new clean water from our water treatment plant, and we start sending it through our existing pipes, if there's any problem in the existing pipes, eventually that'll float out, wash out? I mean, we all know that our pipes are our pipes, and these guys are not involved in our pipes. Our pipes are our pipes. That's why we're doing this whole, mandated look at our pipes and replacing pipes, and we're replacing pipes all over the place. So I don't know that this is an issue. When we get new clean water, we're responsible for the pipes, and we gotta worry about our pipes. It's ipso facto. Okay, thank you very much. Victoria.
Did he say no ammonia in the new water treatment
We're
plant?
not
Is that what he
putting,
said?
we're not putting ammonia on the new water treatment.
No ammonia.
I'm not aware of ammonia going in the plant.
Okay, Victoria, he said, that's
sure.
what he said.
Okay.
Thank you,
That
thank you
should
for
be in the
coming.
contract then, I
Well,
think.
that's the point that we should bring up.
My name is Victoria Olson. I'm actually here to give a report to one of our commissioners, and I'm a Sierra Club member, so I'm very concerned about water, our drinking water especially, because it's a human right to have clean drinking water. That's what we feel. Plus, these pictures of water, this is in a washing machine. It's green. I mean, we shouldn't have, and this is the water that comes out of Broward Performing Arts. They do have a filter for our drinking water, but if you're to turn on the tap water, that's what you get. Not very nice. First thing on the top, and you can pass it around.
Sure.
First thing on the top of the list is, I was very taken back by the fact that they did not consider getting the loan from the Clean Water Trust, which is a federal, it's the Federal Clean Water Trust Fund. They give you low interest rates, they help with any engineering, design ideas. It's a win-win. It's a federal project. It's like having the Army Corps of Engineers coming in to oversee a project is having the Federal Clean Water Trust Fund coming in to help us build a new water plant. The mayor of Miami just got $44 million for a project for the federal infrastructure bill to do a project in Miami. I don't understand why Trentalis and the commissioners are not trying for these other ways of getting a loan to build this. Boyd touched on a couple of things. The one thing that I was reading was that the new plant would not remove PFAS, P-F-A-S. They're a chemical that's in everything, our packaging, our clothing, everything. And it will use a filtration and ion exchange to filter the water. That's what you're planning on doing in the new plant, but it doesn't get rid of PAFs. PAFs, it will simply make it a hazardous waste and a discharge problem. So now you're gonna have this hazardous waste discharge problem from the waste from use by not doing it. But meanwhile, I mean, I'm very much opposed to this because I think that let's put it this way, Lee County did a P3 partnership for their water plant 20 years ago. They're finally getting rid of that partnership and they are very happy. If he would have done a little due diligence into looking at other P3 partnerships, and I know they always say it's in the contract, is the fact that they haven't been very successful. Chris Christie, when he was governor, he did 6 P3 plants throughout Jersey. Everyone has failed back to back, and the city or the municipality where it was built are all taking it back. These, for some reason, are not a happy existence. So those are really my concerns. I could go into more environmental things that'll put you in a coma about water. And basically, I received a report from the Florida DEP, and every single body of water in the state of Florida, every stream, every pond, every canal is polluted. Tarpon River, he said he cleaned it up, it's still registering polluted. So our whole state is terribly polluted, and it's getting worse, and I'm sure it's gonna go into the aquifilter at some point and poison us all. So I don't know, I think water's so important that we really need to have control of our water plant in full. Thank you for your time.
Wait, you got questions?
Got a question?
You said I'm opposed to this. I need to know what's this that you are
Opposed to the P3 partnership.
okay, and not the plan.
Oh, no,
Okay.
the P3 partnership. I
Okay,
know we
thank you.
need a new plan, or
Thank
maybe
you.
we can fix the other one. It's the P3. Yes, sir.
Yes, we are opposed to P3. We recommend it to the mayor and commission to do an RFP as opposed, which is normally done with treatment plants as opposed to the P3. And they voted 3 for the P3, so they didn't take our recommendation.
Oh.
And just a quick thing as far as the NH4, which is ammonia, that's supposed to prolong the chlorination effect in killing or disaffecting bacteria, but it has some drawbacks that's associated with that. So you get good and bad products on that. You mentioned it's been more recently
PFAS?
yes, PFAS. As far as, that really came to fruition in Miami when the fire department was spraying chemical fire retardant on their well field site. And then they realized this just blew up everything as far as cancer and everything else associated with that. In fact, I think I did an article in a newsletter for the Pure Point Homeowners Association on that. But yeah, there's things, even with clear water, you still have the older cast iron pipes that I alluded to, and they're still rusting. It's just the nature of it. It's still there, really going to get that. And also, especially in areas where the water flow, the velocity is slow, it stagnates more, it gets more concentrated. You're still gonna have that in there. So headed in the right direction as far as trying to get the right treatment involved here, so it doesn't acerbate the rectification would create a worse situation and when it gets into the system over time. And again, the purpose is to extend the disinfection capability of fluorine so that it goes through. It weakens it, but it prolongs it so that you don't have to put another chlorine recharge plant in the system, so.
So
Thank you
Victoria-
for
so-
clarifying that. Just my one final thing is, I hope you're not gonna be ready for October 18th, because I know why they're pushing to have the vote done. There's several commissioners that are running for office that are against the P3 partnership, and they are scared that if they get elected, it's going to fail. I've been talking to all of them. And there's 4 of them that are running that are against the P3 partnership, and that's his fear, and that's, I know why they're pushing this while they still have Sorensen in. They will have a vote, I think. I don't know.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you
That's
for my
that's
time.
above our pay grade.
Oh,
But
okay.
I do want to assure you so that you know that, things are not as bad as they seem. We are, in fact, always looking for those extra federal dollars, state dollars. We had a great presentation last week about the methodology of how you get those grants and where we're going. So we're trying for every possible grant.
Oh, good,
Good.
thank
And
you.
if I could point out, the $44 million that you were talking about that the city of Miami got, the people who put together the applications and got that money is Suleiman and Chris Bennett that have since come to the city of Miami.
Yay!
So
we have the
things are
right
not
to-
as bad as they would seem.
And I will say the mayor and the city manager have both been aggressively talking with Washington DC and talking with lobbyists to make sure that we know when grants are coming out, when there's different opportunities to get free money, and to make sure we don't miss any of those opportunities.
It's not free money, it's our
Good.
tax dollars.
Well, yeah, but still.
Recirculating.
Recirculating. Thank you, Victoria, for coming.
Just so you look at this real quick, so in that 80,500 a day, that did include the back and forth, so I can have this correct when I give my report.
Why don't you and I, we'll stay here, we'll talk.
Okay.
I don't wanna keep everybody,
All right,
but
thank
we'll talk. Okay. Alrighty, that concludes our agenda. Our next scheduled meeting is November 7th, but I'm certainly hopeful that we will have a special meeting sometime at the end of October. Anything else I need to advise everybody about?
So the next meeting, we need you guys to end by 4:30.
Yeah, we talked about that. We will do that.
Also too, if you do plan to have another public meeting prior to your next meeting, you need to do a vote on that as well.
Okay, but we don't know the date, so we'll have to make it open-ended.
Coordination with the,
To be determined? Okay, so can I get a motion to hold a special meeting on the water treatment plant comprehensive agreement to be determined? Would that satisfy, to be determined? Yes, okay. Somebody please make a
Move the
motion.
comments and the motion.
Move the comments and the motion. Second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you for keeping us on track. All right, gentlemen, thank you for coming. I'm looking forward to the end of October and to in the interim, getting some of the material. Alan, could we, as soon as that material is prepared, let's not wait till the meeting. Let's circulate it to the members so we can see it beforehand.
Yes.
Thank you very
As
much.
soon as I can, I will get out there.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the staff for all the work that you've been doing.
Yeah, and to Mr. Corbin's point, when that thing gets fixed, whatever the glitch is, let's get all the documents.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, ours is not the only committee that suffers from that, trust me.
Good meeting, Madam Chair.
Very good meeting, everyone. Thank you.
Very good.